Record.
Okay, now we're recording. Okay. Right,
Okay.
right. Yes, it is. Okay, good. Yeah, I did an interview last week with somebody, and I was sitting there for like 15 minutes going, oh God, I hope this is working. 'Cause, you don't want
It
to,
happens.
yeah, you don't want to waste people's time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I had to learn how to teach using this during the pandemic. And,
Ah,
yeah, it was just sort of, yeah, kind of wild, but um, yeah, we all became experts on technology. Oh, I hope this guy ends up being really good and doesn't come crawling all over everything. Anyway, tell
yeah.
tell me how you pronounce your name because I don't want to say it wrong.
No, it's okay. Deepak. So
Okay.
like Tupac, but Deepak.
Yeah.
And then the last name Shukla. So Shukla,
Chocolate, just like
Shukla.
I thought. Okay, good. I just,
Yeah,
yeah, good, because I don't want to, nothing worse
I
than
understand. Don't
introducing
worry.
someone and then you're wrong.
You're like, yeah, yeah, no, good question.
So you're in Italy. What
Correct.
part?
So northern Italy, the nearest city is Turin. So you could say, but you could say the region Piedmont. So
Okay.
Piedmont in Italy. If you want to just say one region, say Piedmont. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Turin's like 70 kilometers from where I am, so it's not that close really. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I always just like to know. And you are obviously,
British Indian, born and raised in
I know, I
London.
was gonna say I could
Indian,
not,
yeah.
I mean, I know you're British and probably Indian, but yeah, I wasn't sure either. So
No, no, no. I understand. It's a good assumption. I am. So yeah.
anyway. So tell me about your running career. Have you always been a runner, or was this something that you picked up along the way? Or so tell me a little bit about that.
I've always enjoyed running. I started running when I was 15 with a friend of mine, Tom, when he used to go for runs at a local park called Black Park. And I joined him once, 14 or 15. From there, running began. And I discovered, I guess I like running because his family didn't believe in the holidays, i.e., for example, Christmas. And I remember being quite excited about going to do a run at 7 a.m. on Christmas Day. I didn't really understand that that meant how much that was an indication of how much I like running when I was 15. Then I have always run. My first real distance run, though, the first time I ran more than say 10 kilometers was when I decided to enter a marathon aged, I think 21 or 22. I went to a weekend Australian gentleman, I forget his name, but it was one of those conferences where you have a weekend and then they want to upsell you into a program. But the weekend itself was amazing, and I'd never been to anything of that nature before, and that convinced me that I should run a marathon because it was something that I enjoyed. And then I booked my first marathon as a consequence of that weekend, so I'm really thankful for it in Chicago. So my first run was in the US actually. And the reason behind that was because I thought I'd make it big and I spent money on a credit card to pay for the flights. So that was my big, okay, great. Let me do something that I'm uncomfortable doing because I didn't know if I ran a marathon in my backyard, so to speak, London, that I'd have the same level of determination and application of effort. So yeah, I booked that marathon in Chicago, and that was the start of my journey into distance running.
Yeah.
And and from
How did you do on that
I
particular?
did I yeah, absolutely. It was my first marathon, and I think I did 4 hours 40 or maybe 4 hours 45 minutes. So
Oh,
I remember because
good.
I was backpacking or traveling leading up to the run. So I that was when I put together a little WordPress blog actually. I think it's called deepakdoeschicago.wordpress.com. I still have it, I think, up on the interwebs. And I was training. Anyway, I don't but I'm giving you a whole backstory, which might be too
Okay,
long and irrelevant.
it's okay. I don't mind. So
So,
you did a
so
blog.
from there, that was my first marathon. And then I first ultra was a couple of years later, which was around like maybe 100, 150. Basically, I transitioned to the 100 kilometer mark in my mid 20s. So early 20s marathon, like 22, 23, ultra 100 kilometer distance, maybe 25, 26. And now I'm 38.
Right.
I didn't really go beyond that, but I did my first 100 miler this year actually because I've never done 100 miles before. So that was my first 100 miles. And then Now I'm training currently to do my first ever 200 miles in December. And I, well, it's very obvious. I like running, and it's
But
also it also accelerated during my mid-20s because I got into therapy, had a lot of, let's say, problems with anxiety, self-esteem, relationship problems, and it became apparent that running was a good outlet for, I guess, my energy, and it was a good way to seek some personal solace. So actually, the therapist Ragni that I was seeing recommended that I do more of literally running, and that actually then began a journey where I accelerated the volume of running that I did, and that had a direct impact actually upon my mental health, a really big positive one. And since then, it's had such a positive association in my life that I've always stuck with running because it's helped me kind of feel better, I guess, about myself.
therapy or something. Yeah, I mean, I hear that from a lot of people. So it sounds like it kind of comes easy to you.
Yeah, it does. Running, if I'm thin and I'm wiry, and I think I've got a body type that is perhaps more predisposed to running. I think I and if I look across my family, actually, everyone's got a high level of energy and does sport vigorously in one way or another. I'm the only person that's doing running, but I do think it's connected to the fact that if I look at my family ancestry, we're farmers. So I don't know necessarily, but I look at, my dad is in his 60s. He still does an hour to 2 hours of exercise every day with yoga, push-ups, and this and that. My mum, who's actually significantly overweight, being honest, and does nothing. She's 5'1", 5'2", but she's got a resting heart rate of like 65 beats a minute.
That's
And
amazing.
and my resting heart rate is like 38 beats a minute, and I'm not that fit
Yeah.
in that I don't run incredibly quickly, if that makes sense. Like I'm a plodder. And then my sisters, they will party until 3 a.m. and they're 50, and then they'll wake up at 7 and go to the gym for an hour. And that's been their lifestyle for like the last, as long as I've known them. So it's interesting to observe. So I do think that there's some genetic component to it because I just look at like how my siblings are, and it manifests in different ways, but everyone's got a high level of energy. And so yeah, that's kind
Good.
of perhaps
Good
where
to-
some of it comes from also.
Yeah. So when you say you're not super fast, what's your, pace, I guess
Yeah, sure. So the 100-mile run that I did, I ran it around, I think it was maybe 7, like just under 8 minutes per kilometer. So I did the 100 miles in 22 hours and 45 minutes. And when you do ultras, it's all about running in I think they call it zone 2. Basically, you need to run at a pace such, of course, you can communicate and you feel quite relaxed. I say relaxed. So amongst ultra runners, I mean, my 100-mile run would put me down as a good hobbyist, let's say. So it was a good time. It was a good time for a first timer. And then we'll see how the 200-mile goes. But yeah, no, I've never strayed far from running. I've done other things. I applied to the British Army. I've had a licensed fight, Thai kickboxing, which is on YouTube, incidentally. And I've done a couple of Ironmen, so like Ironman long distance triathlons. So I
yeah.
have dabbled in other stuff, but I've always returned back to running. So I just kind of stick with it.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like it's working out well. So you do you consider yourself I'm imagining that your 100K and your 200 milers, those are not on road, right?
So the 100K run. So I've done maybe 3 or 4 100K runs, which is I think it's maybe around 62 miles or something like that. But the one of them was a park run. The most recent one, you run around a 1 kilometer loop 100 times,
Oh my
which
God.
was which was I've never done something like that before. So I was curious just to see what it would be like
Yeah.
because I thought, am I going to get absolutely bored out of my mind?
How
But
did
the
you get
Italians,
I
the
know
the
I've done
Italians
yeah.
they
No,
they 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 do this kind of stuff so well. They had like a commentator who was commentating every time. They're like, "Vai Shukla," and it was like I was at a, I think it was football stadium or something. The food was fantastic, and it was like an event. So that was really interesting. The the
Yeah.
the 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 others that I've done have all been, one of them's been mountainous, so that was in Madeira in the mountains. That was very tough. One of my first, and the other one was like a forest style run. So the majority there's three or four. They've been mostly trail.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you don't really, I mean, I've never really heard of any, ultra runs that are on pavement, so to speak. So
I
that's,
think you have to specifically go and look for it with some intention, but because of the distance, of course, as you can imagine, you get out of the city and you run trails rather than run concrete. So, no,
yeah.
you're right, and it was good to have that experience running around a park though, because I thought I want to give this a go just to see how it is,
Is
and it
it
was convenient.
mentally with that? I mean, because I've done a few of those, but phew, it's hard.
Yeah, it got difficult. Yeah, I mean, you know what was actually interesting? No, it was difficult. It was also just a grey day where it rained the whole time, and you get 5 or 6 hours into it, and it just gets horrendously boring. So that one was there was a run recently that I didn't complete because I found that actually more boring. And that run, so I did a run. So the what was good, or what I've discovered about myself, is that I like runs that are runnable. Now that sounds counterintuitive, but what I mean by that is there are trail runs with a huge level of ascent that are in mountains that aren't actually running. It's power hiking because you don't run. You just
That's my thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. So I didn't know that going into a run that I entered recently, the Mount Adamello Ultra Trail, and because I was naive, I didn't look up the full details. And that is a mostly you power hike. So I DNF'd, I did not finish, which was interesting. That was interesting. What was interesting or decimating for me mentally was that I was 15 hours into it. I'd only covered around 59 kilometers, but I'd spent less than 30 minutes running that entire time because it was just too technical, too high, and I just could not mentally cope with the I couldn't run. And I realized that it's a very different type of event, to be honest with you, from runnable ultras. And I didn't appreciate that distinction until silly me, I'm 10 hours into it and I'm like, I'm not running. I'm just like hiking the whole time. So that was a kind of unwelcome, but also welcome revelation because it's now changed my running calendar moving forward, if that makes sense. Because there were runs that I would have liked to have done naively, but now I looked at it and I thought, I just don't want to do those runs anymore because I want to run. I don't want to hike. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, if you ever find yourself in Texas, we've got some pretty good, not mountains, but we've got some pretty good, they call it hill country, up outside of Austin. I live about an hour or so from there, and yeah, got some pretty. I think you might enjoy some of those because you seem like you've at least been able to handle some of the technical stuff. It's just that really sounds like the bouldery,
yeah.
ugh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that run at Mount Adamello was 11,500 meters of elevation gain. So it's got a lot. The other ones that I've done, anything that's kind of like the 200 miler that I'll do will be 6,000 meters across 200 miles. That's a lot of runnable terrain, that means, to be honest with you. And the 100 miler that I did was 3,500. But in that 15 hours, I did 4,100 meters of elevation gain. So I could have done that. So I think that I can cut anything that's depending upon the distance, but sub 3 to 4,000 meters, I think I'm okay. It's just, as you said, if it's hillsides and not mountain, I'm good because I know there's lots of running then. Even if it is a hill, uphill or down, they're runnable. But if you're saying we're going right up into the mountains, I'd say pass.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you, although I kind of prefer the flatter trails because yeah, I actually my first 50-mile attempt, it was a place called Bandera, and it's outside of San Antonio here, and
Okay.
and I was going up. It was probably like about a I don't know. I can't. I mean, to me, it was a very big hill. It's called Lucky
Yeah.
Peak, which it wasn't very
Okay.
lucky for me because it was like 5:30 in the morning and it had been raining, and and it had a lot of that Scrabble rock. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
heavily. And I lost my footing and slid and cut open a flap on my knee. And of course, stupid me, I kept going. I was like, well, look at it's just a flesh wound, So it's but I ended up having to drop out of that one because I had to go get stitches at the hospital. But
Ouch.
yeah, but I did complete a 50K or 50K, 50 miler the following month at a little flatter place. So it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit of a confidence boost. And also I've been training for so long. I was like, no, I can't not do this. So,
Oh, I understand. I understand that. I mean, yeah. So, given the distances that you've done and the terrain, you're completely familiar with it, and it's just interesting to understand there are within run there really are within, because obviously you've got road runs, you've got guys that can do sub 3 hour marathons. It's like ridiculously fast. Where I'm just like, buddy, how do you do like a 5 minute or 5.5 or 6 minute mile over 26 miles when I'm out here doing, we'll do 12, 15 minute miles or whatever it might be, depending upon the terrain, of course. So it's just I've begun that race gave me a much greater appreciation for the distinctions within running, because there's some people that absolutely love, of course, really technical trails where it's Mount Alamello was also dangerous, as in it required a high level of focus to make sure you don't just fall over, because it's and I don't I realized I was like, I just want to run, and I kind of want to be okay with going there in my mind and kind of running slightly off center because I'm just thinking about something. Whereas I do that on that, and you get it. So no, I'm really happy that I had that discovery before I booked in a load of other events. But I've been like, well, okay, this is going to be a nightmare.
you're not going to be joining Killian Jornet or somebody.
Exactly,
I don't know how
and
that
that
guy
was one.
does it. Oh,
I don't know, because it was funny. I have a running coach, and it was interesting. He said, "Look, unless you're Killian Jornet, he said no one's running these things. He said you are hiking, and and unless you're some of the top guys, Courtney Dowell to Killian Jornet, Jim, is it Jim
oh,
Holmesley or something like that?
oh yeah,
All of these guys,
Walmsley. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
saw him.
yeah,
I
yeah, like
saw
some,
him. I actually saw him at that place I was telling you about. He did the 100K. He set the 100K course record
wow,
several years ago, and I was just at the finish line. I had done the 25K and was just hanging around. And I saw this guy come in, and he's just like stick thin. He had kind of wild hair at the time, and he looked like he had just started. And I saw the race directors pulling out the tape, and I'm like, oh my God, and because the year before I had seen somebody else set the record or be the first person.
yeah,
So that was something to see. And then the following year, he was crewing another, a friend of his or whatever. And we ran into him at well, there's not that many restaurants in Bandera. It's a very small town, but
okay,
um,
yeah,
and I recognized him. Of course, my friends didn't know who he was, and so I'm like fangirling out, and they're all like, "We need to go up and meet him." I'm like, "Oh God," So he's up there paying his bill, and we all kind of swarm him, and he was really super nice, and we got our picture taken with him, and his friends were cracking up because
wow.
they're just like. It's just such a niche sport.
Weird. Yeah, it is. It is really, isn't it? It's interesting. It's interesting to see. It's now in a period of transition, isn't it? Which is quite exciting. Like it's going mainstream.
Yes.
People that money is coming into the sport because there's influencers that are rising with all the YouTube stuff that I watch as well. Where I'm like, oh, let me watch a documentary about this trail or that trail, and see ththese guys. We've got a Tom Evans, a Brit guy that's coming up in the scene as well. And it's just no, I totally agree. It's nice though to see it beginning to kind of come out where people are saying, oh, it's fashionable to do FKTs and ultras and all of this type of stuff, especially over your side of the pond. Although, to be honest with you, in Italy, because we're near the Alps, there's a lot of people, of course, that love the trails out here. So yeah.
That's cool. No, I think that's really interesting because I haven't really talked to. I think I've talked to only one other person who runs in Europe, so it's like it's kind of a different world to me. So it's interesting. But yeah, actually, and you were speaking about Courtney. I actually saw her come through my aid station at that same
Wow.
Well, it was about 2 years ago. She won the 100K at Bandera.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that might be something for you to think about because people do come from all over the world. It's in early January, and it's run by an outfit called Tejas Trails. It's Tejas Trails.
Oh,
And
I'm on the site now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And but yeah, people come from all over the world and it's really quite a scene, you know. I mean, like I said, I live like an hour from there, so I go up and volunteer. I mean, I've run the 50K and the 25K a few times. And the weather can be anything. You know, it could be
Wow.
ice, it could be, warm. But it's just yeah, it's always interesting. And it's like I think the year I did my first 50K out there it rained and it was just mud, and I learned that there were lots of different kinds of mud. And it took me like, I don't know, 10 hours to get through it all, but I
Wow.
finished, so that was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
cool. But anyway, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no, no. Thank you.
dropping those
I'm
names,
looking
I'm
at
like,
it.
I've met those people, and she's super nice too. I mean,
God.
yeah, and there's another girl, God, what's her name? I can't think of it.
I'd almost feel like it'd be unusual to meet like a super unfriendly, like, recognized
Yeah, no,
ultra.
the thing I love about the trails community is that it's a very egalitarian sport, I think, because
Yeah.
generally they don't start people in, like shoots or whatever, and
Yeah.
way.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like everybody's out there, and of course I always know my place. I stay way in the back so I don't get
A
trampled.
ditto. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
especially at Bandera because it starts out and it's very single track and it's like a conga line. And so,
Okay.
jumping off the trail a lot, letting people pass me. And next thing I know, I'm at the end. I'm like, well, that's not good. But yeah, I think that's one of the things I love about that. I heard a story about a guy who was he was at like a national park, here in the US, and he was about to set the course record, and
Wow.
and this woman was walking her dog, but the dog got away. And so he ran after the dog, picked the dog up, brought it back to her, and then continued his race. But he forfeited the winning or the FKT, whatever. But that's just kind of how the community is. Is like if you fall, the people around you will stop and help pick you
Oh,
up.
yeah.
At a road race, they'd probably just jump over you. So
It's very true. It's very true. It's very true. It does feel like a different sport.
yeah.
As you said, like it's a different community. I think the
I think
marathons
that's
and the
why I
like.
like
So,
it. Yeah, because I mean, I came into it probably about 12 years ago, something like that, and
mm.
yeah, it's just like I found my tribe, and it's just real. I mean, I'm not good at it or anything. I mean, I have a lot of shares of DNFs because I've had some mental blocks and things like that, and of course I'm a little older, so yes.
I think it's interesting what you just said there, though, because I have you have runs that just seem to go like the 100 mile I've done. I feel like was there someone else when I did that because I did a negative split. I got faster on my second 50 miles, which was super weird for me because I'd done the 100K before that and I was struggling massively. And I thought, how the hell am I going to do 100? I was like, this is flat and I'm just going round and round, which is granted it's boring, but it shouldn't be physically as taxing. But I was walking in stages and I was like, oh my God, my legs. So coming into the 100 miler, I was like, I've got no idea how this is going to go. And it's just interesting, as you said, that, because I've got my share of DNFs as well. There was a whole period where I was just not completing anything because I was just like, oh,
Happens.
and and then and then I took some time off from running because I thought I'm sick of running and maybe I don't want it. And then I, for my first ever time, got a running coach last year because I moved to Italy and there's more hills where I live now. And I thought, oh, let me get a running coach. And that then has transformed my running because I've always just run intuitively before, which is, as I've discovered, bad. And this is for the first time I've actual run with a program where
Yeah,
he programs it all for me, of course. And I've just seen my running transition. So it's yeah, it's just interesting the differences between races, how you feel, and some of it just feels like a fluke. But there's just days where I perform so much better than others, and I feel like I was a different person then.
I know, and it's yeah, and yeah, I mean, I've been coming out of a slump because I tried that 100. tried a 100 mile. I've never finished a 100 mile. I've tried it twice. I got to about 100K, but it was one of
Yeah.
those ones like you were describing where it's like a circle and you know, and
Yeah.
I tried it about 2 or 3 years ago and really, but I've been having a lot of mental struggles, just like, not wanting to do it. I was burned out. I was kind of tired and I think I
Yeah.
was just pushing myself. And then because my friends were doing it, and therefore I thought, let's do it. They've lived, they didn't die. And I got out there and I got, probably about like 28 miles in, and I was just like, I can't do it. And my
Yeah.
mind was,
Something just
I kept doing all the things I knew how to do to, to kind of get my mind right, stay present, sit, drink a Coke, whatever, but I just, and then I thought, well, I'm out here with my friends. That'll be okay. It'll make me feel better. But then I kept thinking, oh God, I'm going to drag them down with me. It was just like in my own little miserable world, and it was terrible. So, but yeah, so I've been trying to come back, a little bit. So anyway,
I
sorry,
hear
you
you.
care about me. But well, that's really cool about the 200 miler. So, how do you listen to music? Do you listen, do you do anything? I mean, how do you get your into that right mindset when you are conquering these sorts of things?
I what I've noticed is that on event day, I don't use music, which was which is interesting for me. So when I train, I use music, but
Mhm.
I think it's because when I train, I run similar trails effectively. So I'm doing the same thing. There's variations of it, but it's the same thing. I know where I'm going. I know what to expect. Whereas on race day, it's new. So it does and there's people. So I find that I have more external stimulation than I do when I train. So when I train, I've got a 5 hour run that I'm due to do Saturday morning as an example to prep to begin. So I will listen to music because I know I'll just get absolutely bored out of my mind. If I mean I'll probably get bored out of my mind anyway. But I in terms of, I mean in terms of how and what I do, I will have the same playlists. So I don't listen to different music. I listen to the same music. I listen to songs on repeat typically. So I'll listen to the same song for 30 minutes before I change to a new song. I find that if I change too quickly, it disrupts my rhythm. I treat myself every hour where I will stop. I say stop, it depends what I'm doing. I might walk a hill for a couple of minutes and because I keep my phone on airplane mode, I'll turn it off and I'll look at my WhatsApp messages and then reply to a couple of people here and there. So that will be like a treat, like my connection with the
Sure.
human world when I do that. And I think that I've also noticed that if I have to do this is talking about training season, if I'm doing a long run, for example, on Saturday, I just need to wake up super early and do it. I don't like waiting for it if I'm doing a long run. So today, for example, before coming onto the podcast with you, I needed to do an hour run. So I can do that in the middle of my day and I don't mind. But if it's a long run, I can't do it late because it also leads to me not completing. I've noticed I had was due to do a 3 hour, 3.5 or 4 hour run last weekend. I didn't wake up and we had plans for the day. So I did an hour and then I stopped. And then I had to go back out again and do 2 hours, 3 hours. And I stopped at 2 hours because I just got bored. And I was like, oh God, I need to think about because my in-laws were over and I was thinking about them being there. And part of me was like, dude, why are you running? Your in-laws are here and stuff. And just all this other stuff. So distractions. I need to be intentional about my plan for the day and when I run. So that's if useful, some insights into some of the prep that I'll do, and then leading into the big runs, I found that company counts for a lot. So I think the one race that I did DNF recently, the 100 mile in Mount Adamella, aside from it being way more technical than I realized, and me not being prepared for not being able to run and the impact that would have on my psychology. What was different there also was I did my 100 mile that I completed in the UK. So I ran with an Englishman for the first 10 hours
Oh, nice.
and that allowed the time to fly by. And I ran to his pace because he'd done several before and I hadn't. And I thought, I'll just kind of stick with you. And he was a big, big talker. So for our 10 hours, 8 hours was him talking. And I
Yeah.
was just happy to listen because I'm not a big talker when I run. But I was like, okay. There were moments where I was like, oh my God, dude, just shut up. But it was great. And then, but then this run, I was by myself, and that let demons, I think, also get in a lot more because I was so I don't know that I've got a blueprint down yet, but these are at least some of the things that I kind of see myself doing when I either prep or I run actual event day.
Yeah. Well, I call the uh, the people I meet on the trails my summer camp friends, because you do develop like this very intimate connection with them, and then when you see them again, it's like no time has passed, and you're just like, "Oh, hey," and it's yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to, although I've had some instances where people are just like insufferably awful. And so I just try to shake them off like, oh, go on ahead. I'm gonna go tie my shoe, or something. It's kind of weird. But anyway, I have probably got to run here shortly because I gotta
Okay.
get to the gym.
Yeah, of course.
But so tell me the name of this 200 miler that you are going to be doing.
Yeah, it's the Centurion 200 miler. I think it's December the 11th. So that was the same one that I did the 100 miler on actually. So they just
That's
extend the
cool.
route. So I'm hopeful that that will really work in my advantage because I say, oh, I've done half the route. So that's great. So, but yeah, that's the company Centurion and it's their 200 miler.
Great, great. Well, I really do appreciate you taking some time to talk to me.
My
And,
pleasure. Thank
and I
you.
wish you the very best on that run and stay in touch because yeah, like I said, keep Bandera on your radar. You might, just, one year decide that, you can swing, getting over here and checking it
I
out.
will.
Yeah, because I think you might enjoy that one. Yeah, and especially because it does attract people from all over, and so you get a lot of the elites because it's a Western States qualifier, and so that's why we get the elites showing up. So it's quite
Okay,
cool.
that
Yeah,
makes
I mean,
sense.
like I
No,
said,
I will.
I'm just sort of a fangirl. It's like, oh my God, look who that is.
Oh, it
Anyway,
sounds great. It
all
sounds
right,
great. It sounds really good.
cool. All right, well, Deepak, thank you so much. And hang on real quick. I'm going to stop
Mm.
recording.